My hunt for Frank Searle continued. I'd uncovered a letter in which Frank signed himself E.F. Searle. I returned to the family records centre and found an Eric Frank Searle from Staines that appeared to fit the bill. But there was no record of death for this man. Could Frank still be alive? Throughout the 1970s, whilst Frank continued his hunt, others made their own unique contributions in the search for the monster. A vicar from Dorset attempted an exorcism upon Nessie.
For thou cloak thyself no more in manifestations of prehistoric demons. Begone, thou hideous demon, unto thine appointed place.
Birmingham musician John Sparky Sly tried to lure the monster to the surface with his piano. During his visit, he found time to make an amateur film featuring a rare interview with Frank Searle.
This is the problem, getting pictures.
Yours is about the best picture in the world at the moment, isn't it?
I would think so.
The best picture I've seen.
Well, the thing is that so few people get pictures. This happens so suddenly without warning.
Without warning, yeah.
And the thing's only there for a few seconds, breaking the surface.
Yeah.
Most people are still staring at the spot where the thing went down about 20 seconds after it went down.
Yeah.
Their cameras on the back seat of the car or up. I mean, I'm walking about with a long lens camera, ready to use it like a gun. Anything that moves.
That's right, yeah.
Literally thousands of people have seen the Loch Ness monsters over hundreds of years, but very, very few get pictures.
Take pictures, yeah.
I went to see a former member of the Loch Ness Project, Ricky Gardner. He was hired by Adrian Shine to produce a dossier investigating Frank Searle's photographs. Hi Ricky, it's Andrew.
Nice to meet you.
Ricky Gardner was an art teacher, and he was a member of the Magic Circle. So he was also quite good at spotting deception.
Well, this is most of the old material. I visited Frank Searle quite regularly, and I was standing next to him on one occasion, and I had a telephoto lens on my camera, and I can remember looking at the lock through it in order to take a light reading, and it suddenly dawned on me that Frank Searle's pictures, or most of them, had much more background in than I could see in my telephoto lens. So it suddenly became clear to me that they weren't taken with the sort of lens that he'd said they were taken with.
How close was you when you spotted the monster, Frank? Oh, well, this is one of the problems, but the nearest I've been is about 600 yards. 600 yards? Which is one hell of a long way when you're trying to get detailed photographs.
Yeah, yeah.
In this photograph, he took a photograph of the head and neck, apparently. Well, I spent a long time wandering around the shores to find exactly the point that he'd taken the photograph from by reference to the background. And I was astonished to find in this case there was a fence post sticking up, which he'd obviously decorated, I think, with cloth and a mitten or something like that for the head.
The monster has come to the surface, Frank.
Actually, they don't really come to the surface for any reason, I think, and most of my fishermen and gamekeeper friends go along with this.
Yeah.
But they break the surface by accident when they're chasing the salmon.
I see.
Like the plesiosaur, which they resemble in shape, they've got to be fish eaters.
Yeah.
There's nothing else in the loch. So what is a monster? A monster is something from a kid's comic or from science fiction.
Yeah.
They're not monsters.
No.
I think Alex in the first place was probably just trying to indicate the size.
Yeah.
But we call them the creatures or the animals. And in fact, most of the locals refer to them as the wee beasties. Yeah.
Well, yeah, in Sale in Inverness, during one year when I was up there were a series of pictures of dinosaurs on postcards. I think it was a Brontosaurus. This is the one. And Frank cut from it the head and neck, the hump, and these were then pasted onto a photograph of water, and then the picture was re-photographed. But this was so obviously a fake that I think we got the impression that by then Frank was possibly even having psychological problems.
Oh, yes, Frank. Was there anyone with you when you sighted the monster, or did you on your own?
Several times I've had someone with me.
Visitors or?
The pictures I took in October 1972, I had an Australian school teacher in the boat with me, who was staying with me.
Oh, I see.
Picture I took on July the 9th, 1974, had an art student from Yorkshire staying with me. She was with me in the boat.
Frank Searle's photographs represent possibly an experience, but more likely somebody else's experience, or perhaps of something that he imagined, like a painting. He used to say things like, you know, this is what the fishermen see. So I think he was quite a deep character in some ways. I think these photographs represented more than just being a fake.
Around this time, Steve Feltham visited Frank at the loch.
I remember coming down here in 1978, which then I was a 15-year-old and absolutely fascinated by this subject and just wanted more information, anything I could pick up. And somewhere, just around here somewhere, he must have had his caravan that he was living in. Big old blue tin caravan. And on the side of that was this lean-to, like, wooden frame with clear plastic tacked onto it. There was this exhibition that he had. And you'd walk in one entrance to this and you'd walk along, all these newspaper cuttings on the wall and all his photographs and stuff were there. And I spent ages in there reading it all, whilst my parents were stood outside talking to him. And I came out and I went over to him and I said, "Excuse me, have you got any real photographs of it?" And at this point Frank just exploded with, "Real photographs? They're all real photographs, boy. There's no fakes in there." But even then, at the age of 15, a 15-year-old could see they were just nonsense he'd photographed.
I think he had I learnt later anyway that he had a reputation for getting nasty with people who penetrated too deeply into the way that he'd done his photographs. And we do know that even later on there were some quite violent acts.
On the 15th of August 1976, an exposé of Searle's photographs was published in the Sunday Mail. He was publicly accused of being a fraud. It appeared to spell the end for Frank and his days of monster hunting.
I remember seeing him in the paper. We thought it was a great thing to see this monster, which we thought would have been a monster, but then people were saying that it was fakes, you know. But I just don't know.
Mind you always get that. No matter what it is, there's always someone dubious of things, you know.
Despite the media onslaught, Frank refused to acknowledge his critics and doubters. He told locals that with one conclusive photograph, he would beat the competition and re-establish himself. Then one day, out on the loch, Frank took a photograph of something even stranger and more inexplicable. He immediately contacted the papers.
He came back in one day saying that he'd got pictures of a UFO. And the pictures of the UFO looked like what a UFO should look like. It looked like a flying saucer. But there was nothing in the background. There was no to say. He could have copied it out of a book for all I knew. He could have done something to make it look like a UFO, dangled in something in the end of a string for all I know. But the Daily Record decided to use it anyway.
He said it just came flying over and I took a photo and that was it. Personally, Frank, I think that wasn't a real UFO. Because Frank talked about those other photos and that one he refused to discuss. And I rather think that he didn't want to say, listen, I faked that photo as a joke, because that would discredit his photos of the beast. But that's my personal impression, that he threw something in the air and took photos to test his camera speed or his ASA or whatever it's called.
He even had a
a flying saucer over Loch Ness at one stage.
Oh, well.
Do you remember that?
I remember something about it. I don't know, it was taken up here somewhere, around about Forge Hotel, I reckon. But someone said it was the monument, it was in the Forge Park, it was. There's a monument and a fountain, you know. And the top of the fountain just looks like a flying saucer.
I think it was in the paper, wasn't it?
Aye.
And a picture of it. Was there a picture of it?
I think there was, don't I?
I think there was. Well, we all know what people think of flying saucers, don't we?